Breaking news. The gender gap between Trump and Harris is expected to be the largest in the history of elections. According to polling and experts, the presidential election that will take place in November may have the greatest gender gap in the history of the United States. There was a gender discrepancy of 35 points between former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris, according to the most recent poll performed by the New York Times and Siena College. The poll was conducted between August 5th and 9th among 1,973 likely voters in the states of Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin for potential voters. In the poll, Trump had a 14-point edge among men, with 52% of them supporting him compared to 39%. In the race for female voters, Harris had a 21-point advantage, with 56% of the vote, compared to Trump's 35%. There was a significant gender disparity between the two contenders, according to earlier national polls. The results of a poll that was done by the Times and Siena between the 22nd and 24th of July showed that Harris had a 14-point edge among probable female voters, 55% to 41%, while Trump had a 17-point lead among men, 56% to 39%. It is equivalent to a gender disparity of 31 points. The study was conducted across the country with 1,142 potential voters. The gender disparity was even more pronounced in the most recent poll conducted by Quinnipiac University. In this poll, Harris had a 16-point lead among women, 56% to 40%, while males sided with Trump by 23 points, 60% to 37%, resulting in a gender deficit of 39 points. According to the results of an exit poll conducted by NBC News in 2016, the gender gap was discovered to be 24 points, while in 2020, it was revealed to be 23 points. In an interview with Newsweek, she stated that we may have a larger than normal gender gap in 2024. She went on to say that there is a gender gap growing among Gen Z with respect to public opinion, voting behavior, and political engagement more generally. According to the findings of a Gallup poll conducted in 2021 and examined by the Survey Center on American Life, 44% of women between the ages of 18 and 29 identified as liberal, while just 25% of men did so. According to the data, this political divide between young men and women might result in the Republicans gaining the support of young men for the first time in over 20 years, while the Democrats will continue to win the support of young women. The Wall Street Journal conducted polls in February and July, and the results showed that young men could vote for Donald Trump in this election if he continues to receive support from a majority of men under the age of 30, as he did before Vice President Joe Biden withdrew from the race. In fact, the margin of support between Trump and Biden among men under the age of 30 came to 14 points. According to predictions provided by the Associated Press Votecast, young males supported Biden by a margin of 15 points in the year 2020. According to statements made by Trump Communications Director Stephen Chung to Newsweek, Gen Z men and Gen Z women supporting Trump is a reflection of the wholesale rejection of a weak, failed, and dangerously liberal Kamala Harris and Tim Walz ticket, which is the most radical in the history of the United States. The consolidated surveys showed that young women supported Biden by a margin of 30 points, which is practically unchanged from the situation in 2020. There are a variety of hypotheses that have been proposed by specialists to explain the reasons for the gender gap in political opinions that exists among members of Generation Z. The author and expert on gender violence prevention education, Jackson Katz, Ph.D., believes that it is a symptomatic example of the efforts that the Democratic Party is doing. Democrats have been very poor in their outreach to men, especially young men who live online, according to his interview with Newsweek. The message that they have been hearing for years is that the Democrats hate men, especially white guys. This message has been spread across the entire virtual universe, including on social media, podcasts, and the misogynistic manosphere. It is presented as something that is apparent, a declaration of truth that is objective. I have been arguing for a long time that the Democratic Party ought to take a decisive action in response to this situation and communicate directly with males, including young men, and tell them that they are seen, heard, and cared about. In an interview with Newsweek, Kellen Habibelahi, chairman of the High School Republican Federation of Virginia, expressed his agreement with the statement that he believes the majority of Harris's messaging does not target either men or women. Kamala keeps talking about issues Americans don't face every day, he explained to reporters. Many of her messages are directed toward women rather than men. The majority of her time is spent discussing abortion, but she does not address topics that are relevant to the kitchen table, such as the fentanyl crisis that has resulted in the deaths of tens of thousands of Americans, the crisis at our border, or the fact that many Americans simply do not have the financial means to purchase groceries or petrol. A significant number of young people are concerned that they will not be able to purchase a home, which is one of the most significant issues that I constantly hearing. The following is an additional statement made by Carrie Baker, who is a professor of women, gender, and sexuality at Smith College in Massachusetts. Republicans have been targeting young men for years, developing messages that resonate with young men, which Democrats have not done. When Dems ignore men and focus on first woman messaging, they alienate men, but if they message on the policy positions, they do really well with young men, according to her interview with Newsweek. In a recent study that was carried out by the Young Men's Research Initiative between the dates of July 9th and 23rd, it was found that males between the ages of 18 and 29 were more likely to support female candidates over Trump when they were presented with their policies. These policies included support for high-paying jobs and affordable housing. On the other hand, when they were presented with arguments that centered around the significance of having the first female president, they were less likely to support female candidates. A total of 1,092 males in that age range participated in the survey. The trend of young men drifting away from Democrats and their increasing sexism should be of huge concern to candidates up and down the ticket, noted the author of the report that was conducted by the Young Men's Research Initiative. However, we cannot lose up on the fact that 50 years from now, half of a generation will be able to exercise their right to vote. The findings of this study indicate that we have the potential to make progress by altering the manner in which we discuss democratic issues that young men already support. If we want to communicate with them, we ought to use customized messages. Young Republican men have also